Why hello again, curious acolytes of the dark side, and welcome back to the archives. Among the powerful Sith Lords of the past, there is a certain kind of Lord that sticks out as being rather distinct. That is the mad scientist. There have been several Sith in the past, such as Darth Tenebris and his apprentice Darth Plagueis, that use their talents in the Force to focus towards a specific kind of alchemy. They have each learned the value of exploiting the science behind the Force itself by using the technology that is available to them to alter it and learn from it. But today, my friends and acolytes, we will be discussing a Dark Lord of the Sith that actually combined technology with the Force in order to create an army of terrifying creatures. The ancient Sith of the days of old were known for their creation of monsters, starting with the Dark Jedi, who is famous for this, Sorzus Sin, who pioneered the Leviathan creature out of Sith alchemy, not to mention others such as Freed Nad, whose claim to fame is starting the Beast Wars of Onderon. The evil genius that we'll be talking about today, however, is a brilliant scientist who found her interest in paving the way for how the Force interacted with both the living as well as the technological. So let us now open the holocron of the Sith Lord, Belia Darzu. Much like the technique that she studied, Belia Darzu is a more obscure Lord of the Sith, having only served that role for a very short amount of time. She lived during the latter quarter of the New Sith Wars, which began in the year 2000 BBY, with the Fourth Great Schism as directed by Darth Ruin. With Lord Darzu's death having been sometime in the year 1250 BBY, she was a late comer in this era of Sith Lords, and predates Darth Bane by a little over 200 years. It would actually be Darth Bane who would eventually uncover her holocron in the forgotten Jedi homeworld of Tython, where she had kept her stronghold, a stronghold which would ultimately become her tomb. Belia Darzu was a Shido, meaning she was a shapeshifter, though she primarily took the form of a human woman with short hair. She had seized the mantle of Dark Lord and Lady of the Sith, and begun a conflict known as the Sictus Wars. Belia Darzu was most famous for her research into the dark side ability known as Machu Daru. We have discussed Machu Daru in another holocron before, as it is most famous for being the only Sith created ability that the Jedi were allowed to openly use. As we stated previously, only a certain subsect of the Jedi had the clearance to use this power, which was the Jedi Sentinel Engineers. The whole idea behind Machu Daru was that this was the power to assert one's will over technology. By doing this, the Force wielder would gain an instant download and an understanding of how the piece of technology operated and worked, and then they would have total and complete control over it within the Force itself. It was a very niche ability that was only employed by very few, but those that did use it were able to make powerful applications of it. In the case of Luke Skywalker, he was able to dispatch a team of highly skilled battle droids by simply waving his hand and switching off their servers. But back to the Lady Belia Darzu, she became obsessed with the ability and wanted to see it used on a grand scale, as she had discovered an even more destructive way of using it. By combining her knowledge of Sith alchemy with Machu Daru, she was able to concoct a deadly plague known as the techno-virus. The way this worked was the virus itself was made up of nanogene spores, which were microscopic pieces of nanotechnology that would infect a host and cause them to begin to rapidly growing metallic tumors within their body. These tumors would grow until it took over the host, making them a cyborg of sorts within an organic machine hybrid, without the use of any surgery at all. This was a complete viral infection. Their minds would be totally enslaved to their creator and obey her without question or relenting. Belia Darzu used this on many creatures and humanoids alike, giving them the name of the techno-beasts. The Dark Lady called this process Machu Daru Vitae, and the techno-beast didn't just become partially metallic, but would also literally grow weapons out of these tumors, weapons that were grafted onto their very bodies. One of her creations, a Rancor, had mounted blaster cannons and rocket launchers on its head and shoulders. Other weapons included vibroblades, buzzsaws, lasers, claws, and many other deadly tools of destruction. The techno-virus was an insane success, as even after her death, the techno-beasts were still loyal to her and would actually continue to live for the next 200 or so years. Of course, by the end of that, their flesh had all rotted away, and there was little more than shambling mounds of rusted metal, but they mostly retained their original forms and were loyal only to Belia Darzu. In her stronghold, all the techno-beasts would stumble into the chamber where her holocron was, sensing that that was the only remnant left of her. Beyond, of course, the beasts themselves. During her life, she had organized her techno-beasts into an army that she called the Metacrons, and she would eventually march on the Republic. According to the accounts we have, her army had given the Republic and Jedi a real circuit run, as Belia had one nasty secret embedded into the beasts themselves. The problem that the Jedi encountered was that each of the techno-beasts had the ability to breathe out a cloud of nanogene spores. This caused a sort of pandemic, as Belia's army just kept growing the more and more she conquered. A fun fact, there was even a Jedi that got infected by her spores. However, he was able to use the Force to overcome the illness and resist having his mind enslaved to Darzu. However, the virus still took effect and still began transitioning him into a techno-beast. Interestingly, he embraced this change and would proudly serve the Republic for decades to come while known as the techno-beast Jedi. As for Belia herself, things were not so glamorous. Her followers had conspired to kill her and used her connection with an assassin group known as the Macrosa Order to do so. Lord Darzu never saw it coming and would be unceremoniously killed via poisoning in the year 1250 BBY, cutting short her campaign against the Republic and ultimately causing the Sith to split off into various clans and splinter groups under various Dark Lords, their leader now gone. None of these splinter groups would ever be able to form any sort of cohesive plan against the Jedi though, as they were clearly too powerful for any of the Sith that were separated. And this would remain so until the next little while, until of course Lord Khan finally arrived with the solution, which of course was the Brotherhood of Darkness that we know from the Bane novels. Darth Bane in his journeys for truth would come across Belia's holocron in her stronghold, and with it, all of the techno-beasts still within. They weren't much of a challenge for him though, as by this point in time, they had already been withered down, and Darth Bane was in possession of his Orbalisk armor. But the one thing I want to give some attention to is the techno-beast Jedi. We know not his name, nor anything from him beyond this fact, but I find it absolutely fascinating that instead of becoming bitter at a sudden change, that he embraced it. Becoming a cyborg was definitely unplanned, especially by means of Sith alchemy, but the techno-beast Jedi took on the moniker with pride and displayed it everywhere that he went. I can't help but wonder if the cybernetics caused the techno-virus hampering his skills in the Force like it did with Darth Vader, or if he still could touch it entirely. Though I suppose that it would make up for it. Make up for it in the way of all of the enhancements that came with Machu Daru Vitae, which would include growing his own weapons. Perhaps it's a bit un-Jedi-like, but maybe he had his own arm cannon, or he could use it in desperate situations. I'd love to think that the Jedi even melded his lightsaber into his physiology, so that he could store it inside of his arm or something cool like that. Or maybe he got some visual enhancements that aided him with surveying the battlefield. It could also be a thing like what happened with Echo, who now has a socket arm and is able to hack into computers. I think that this could be incredibly interesting. If the Technovirus Jedi also learned the ability of Machu Daru and used it to heal his cybernetic body if it ever got damaged. I now solely wish we had more information on this Jedi, as the implications of him being a techno-beast is bringing up all sorts of questions. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on the Sith Lord Belia Darzu and her discoveries and the deadly technovirus? Do you think there is possibilities with merging the Force and technology? Or do you think they should keep it exclusively away from one another? Comment your thoughts and opinions down below, Acolytes. And as always, may the Force be with you, and I hope to see you soon.